So, we're coming very close to the end of our symposium today. On behalf of Duncan and Jordanstone College of Art and Design, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and taking part in what has been an incredibly special afternoon, I have to say. So I'm going to say a few words to wind up. The first thing I want to say is congratulations and thank you again, as always, to curator Sophia Hao, who has just created another amazing event. I think we all know that Sophia has got the knack of bringing together some fantastic people, performers, artists, speakers, writers, and it's just amazing to be part of that process. I want to thank the performers, the young artists who have contributed so vitally to this day. Adam Campbell, and thank you, Adam, for not only intervening in a really interesting way into the panel discussion, but also being good enough to stop when everyone was getting stressed about it. But also thank you to Tina Kreckels, who collaborated with you from Berlin, and I don't know that everyone necessarily knows that the sort of organic noises that you were hearing during these performances were a saxophone being played how many miles away? So thank you very much to you. Thank you very, very much to the beautiful, resonant, poetic performance by Chalin, sorry, apologies for getting your name wrong, but the performance was beautiful, so thank you for that. So all of these young artists, you transformed the space, and it's really interesting that the last thing that was talked about on the panel discussion was how sound can transform a space. This space that we're sitting in today is normally a canteen. It's normally somewhere where students meet and chat, drink coffee, listen to horrible Christmas music piped through the speakers. The way in which this space has been transformed is amazing, and that's all down to both the team and the artists who've been here today. So thanks very much to Sam and David for their moving, enlightening, engaging history of the environmental art course at Glasgow School of Art. Thank you so much for that. It was fantastic for me, actually, as a colleague of Graham Fagan's, to hear about his latest work, particularly about how his encounter with Gamelan Ensemble planted the seeds of his current approach. And I think that's something that I hadn't appreciated. I saw Graham's work in the Palazzo in Venice that you saw an image of. And I think it's really important to emphasize how that connects to these concepts of location, and also an acute cognizance of the water as a recurring theme that we've approached today. So thank you for that, Graham. It's always good to find out more about the people you work with. It was really, really interesting to see Rob Frenais on the water again. Thank you for sharing your memories. And also for sharing your love of rowing, which was something I did not think I was going to encounter today, which is fantastic. Yeah, exactly. It's you know, that's one of the great things about these events, the surprises. Also for challenging Anne and Richard to respond to these oars. I mean, again, you know, who expected that? I have to say something about David Toop's presentation. I found it very, very moving, actually, and the way that he talked about the energy of his work with Paul Burwell, the working relationship that he described and the friendship that he described as alarming in its intensity, which I found extremely moving. I thought it was wonderful that he showed us these images of the sort of distributed conglomerate instrument, I believe you described it as. I find that absolutely fascinating, so thanks again for that. It's an absolute incredible privilege to have, to witness Anne and Richard perform. I mean, you know, I can't say how happy we have been to have them here, both creating an exhibition, performing. I have to say something about the way in which they've engaged with students. They've been incredibly generous with their time. The students that worked with them on the performance they did a few weeks ago reported back to me that they had really, really enjoyed the experience and felt they'd learned a huge amount from the experience. So for me, that's the absolute essence of bringing people into an art school, into a situation like this, and the things that these students learned are invaluable. So thank you for that. And thank you very much for performing your historic and sometimes, histrionic, magnificent performances. Describing them through performance was an absolute stroke of genius. And it was something that I think only you could do. Finally, I feel like it's important to acknowledge someone who is not present today, but who has been present all day, and that is Paul Burwell. I think, listening to Burwell's voice resonating faintly through tiny little tinny objects was one of the most moving experiences of the day. So thank you for sharing that, David. And I think it's really important that we do that we do acknowledge that. So I'm just going to finish up by quoting Richard Wilson. If Carol can stack steel, why can't we stack sound? So thank you. So, by way of a final kind of little bit of information and event, I'm going to hand over now to Rob Frenais, who is going to launch the book, Anne Bean, Self, etc. Thank you, Rob.
So, it falls on me to launch this magnificent and rather heavy book. I'll just firstly do the official thing, because no one from LADA, Live Art Development Agency, could be here today. So I'll just read a little bit. Anne Bean, Self, etc. is part of Intellect Live, a series of publications on influential artists working at the edge of performance. And it's a collaboration between Intellect Books, which is the University of Chicago, the Live Art Development Agency. And the series editors are Dominic Johnson, Lois Caden, and CJ Mitchell, all of whom would have loved to have been here, but can't. But the main thing I want to say is that this book, which I have edited, probably wouldn't have happened had it not been for the fact that a young curator came into my office at the Arts Catalyst and started talking to me about the Laying Art Gallery, and that was Sophia Hao. I would suggest that Sophia Hao laid the seeds, sowed the seeds for this book, because I think you started a train of events that led me to then go and talk to Anne, and then think about this whole sort of, this kind of whole conveyor belt of events that have led to this dead tree. I mean, this enormous thing, and it's an incredible book. It's designed by David Gaines, who I think is a very good designer, and just it has images. I mean, look at this image, wonderful image at the end. And it's also a little bit about realities, about how you could capture in the book the life of an incredibly prolific artist like Anne and her interactions with Paul Burwell, Richard Wilson, and all the other artists she is collaborating. Anne is a collaboration addict, I would say. She's actually an addicted collaborator. She can't not collaborate. In fact, she collaborates sometimes even too much, I've even told her. But she's this is, how do you capture that? How do you capture that here? I say in my introduction that this is supposed to be a survey of Anne Bean's work, but it really can't be, because she's only just started. There's, another 10 books here. So, just to say that, and it is a really nice book. The other writers, I'm just going to read out their names, are Lynn McRitchie, who was a former colleague of mine at Performance Magazine, Guy Brett, Dominic Johnson, one of the series editors, the Lucy Neal and Rose Fenton, Mark Pierce, Ezra Rubinstein, and Zach Simplier, and I'm not quite sure whether Reverend Nagassi comes into this. A little bit, okay, great. So, I'd like to launch this book with the addition of Anne's acknowledgement, which is by Theodore Adorno, saying, "The finished work is a lie."
When I got this book 3 weeks ago, I thought, my goodness, it is heavy. And I had said to Rob, it is, I thought, my goodness, it is. What is this material? It's a tree. And, I was flicking and I just felt the wind from the pages, from the leaves of the book. And the leaves were blowing around outside of the tree. And I thought, gosh, these are dead leaves, but they're doing their most beautiful action in this death throw. And I was thinking of the leaves of the books and the trees that this was made from, and the leaves falling. And I had this moment where I just wanted to free the leaves from the book, which I did do in an action in the launch in London, where I basically raised through the book, and the entire audience, or people who guests, made each page into a paper aeroplane and launched the book simultaneously in the air. So I was thinking of something else here, and I wanted to launch the book in a different way, and just giving it this moment of being airbound and going out into the world in a very, very different way to this very solid piece that it is here. So, with this in mind, and this is purely experimental, let's see. This I'm going to do with Richard a very small action.
Should I get out of the way?
No! You're probably in the safest place. You're in the safest place. Turn it.
What? Turn it.
Turn it. That way. Oh, maybe you've done it. That's the book.
I'll never be out.